I am Dorothy Moore, 65 years old and recently widowed. After 40 years of marriage, raising 2 children, and a career as a teacher, I thought my retirement would be peaceful. Instead, my son Maxwell and daughter Pamela started controlling my finances, insisting I was becoming incapable. Last Thursday at dinner, they called me financially and emotionally draining. That night changed everything. By sunset, I had removed their names from every account. If you've ever had family take advantage of you, this story might resonate. Let me know where you're watching from, and please hit that like and subscribe button if you want to see how I reclaimed my life after my children tried to control everything I had worked for. Robert and I built our life together over 4 decades. We met in college, married young, and worked hard raising our 2 children. I taught high school English while Robert worked as an engineer. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable, saving diligently for retirement while putting both kids through college without them needing loans. Robert's death was sudden, a massive heart attack at 67, just 2 years after retiring. One moment we were planning a trip to the Grand Canyon. The next, I was planning his funeral. The grief nearly consumed me those first few months. I barely noticed when Maxwell suggested he should help manage my finances, just until I got back on my feet. "Mom, you're vulnerable right now," he said, his voice gentle but insistent. "Let me handle the complicated stuff." At the time, his offer seemed kind. In retrospect, it was the beginning of a calculated takeover. My financial situation wasn't dire by any means. I had my teacher's pension, Robert's life insurance payout, and our house was fully paid off. We'd purchased it 30 years ago in what was then an affordable neighborhood that had since become highly desirable. According to the last appraisal, the property value had quadrupled. Maxwell, my 42-year-old son, worked as an investment banker. His expensive suits and luxury car projected success, but beneath the polished exterior lurked serious problems. His divorce 3 years ago had been messy and expensive. He had custody of Noah and Emily, my grandchildren, every other week. What I didn't know then was that he had a gambling problem that was slowly destroying his finances. Pamela, my 38-year-old daughter, had married Richard, a corporate attorney, right after college. They had one daughter, Zoe, who was the spitting image of Pamela at that age. Pamela worked as an interior designer, always pushing clients toward the most expensive options. Their lifestyle appeared perfect on Instagram, but as I would later discover, Richard's law firm was hemorrhaging clients, and they were drowning in debt from their oversized mortgage and luxury car leases. The shift from helping to controlling happened so gradually I barely noticed. First, Maxwell suggested I give him online access to my accounts, in case of emergency. Then he began questioning my purchases. "Mom, do you really need new gardening supplies? Your backyard looks fine," he'd say, examining my receipts that he'd taken from my purse without asking. Pamela joined in, scrutinizing my clothing choices. "That sweater looks so dated, Mom. But don't waste money on new clothes. Nobody expects someone your age to look fashionable anyway." Their comments stung, but I brushed them off as concern. Then came the suggestion that I sell my house. "Property taxes are just going to keep rising," Maxwell explained during one of our now weekly family financial meetings. "And the maintenance is too much for you. We could sell it, invest the proceeds, and you could move into our guest room. Just until we find you a nice senior apartment," Pamela added quickly. Against my better judgment, I agreed. The real estate market was hot, and the house sold within days for well above asking price. But the temporary stay in Maxwell's guest room stretched from weeks into months. The promised senior apartment hunting never materialized. Life at Maxwell's house was far from comfortable. I was expected to babysit Noah and Emily whenever needed, cook dinner most nights, and help with housework. My suggestions or opinions were dismissed with eye rolls or sighs of impatience. "Mom, that's not how the kids like their lunches packed," Maxwell would say, redoing my work. "Actually, Mom, we don't do things that way anymore," Pamela would comment when visiting, rearranging furniture I had just cleaned around. My personal space shrank to the guest room, which became less mine with each passing week as Maxwell stored more of his exercise equipment and old files there. My belongings from the house had mostly gone into storage, with only my clothes and a few personal items kept accessible. The weekly financial meetings became increasingly hostile. Maxwell would project spreadsheets showing household expenses, with my supposed share highlighted. Your medical prescriptions went up this month, he'd point out, as if I had any control over medication costs. And you're using too much water with those long showers, Pamela would add. I lived on a strict allowance from my own money, having to justify every purchase. When I mentioned wanting to take a painting class at the community center, Pamela laughed. At your age? Mom, be realistic. That's just throwing money away. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening. We were having dinner, and Pamela noticed the wedding ring I still wore 3 years after Robert's death. Mom, she said casually, spearing a piece of broccoli, have you thought about selling Dad's ring? Gold prices are pretty good right now, and it would cover your portion of expenses for a few months. I looked down at the simple gold band that Robert had placed on my finger 43 years ago. Something inside me finally snapped. No, I said quietly. I won't be selling my wedding ring. Maxwell sighed heavily. Mom, you need to be practical. You're becoming financially and emotionally draining for both of us. We have our own families to consider. Pamela nodded in agreement. We love you, Mom, but you need to contribute more. We can't keep subsidizing you. I stared at my children, these strangers who saw me as nothing but a burden. These people who had grown in my body, whose scraped knees I had bandaged, whose homework I had helped with, whose dreams I had supported. Now they wanted my wedding ring to cover expenses, while living in the house that my money had helped pay for. I didn't argue. I simply finished my dinner in silence, washed my dishes, and went to my room. That night, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, I made a decision that would change everything. I woke up the next morning with a clarity I hadn't felt since Robert died. My first call was to Barbara Peterson, my closest friend for over 30 years and a retired financial planner. She had been telling me for months that something wasn't right with my children's help, but I had dismissed her concerns. Can you meet me for coffee? Somewhere private, I asked her. 3 hours later, we sat in a back corner of a cafe 2 towns over, far from anywhere my children might spot us. I told her everything. Barbara's face grew increasingly concerned as I spoke. When I finished, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Dorothy, what they're doing borders on elder abuse, she said firmly. Let's look at your actual financial situation. Using her iPad, Barbara helped me log into my accounts. What we discovered was shocking. My teacher's pension and Social Security provided a steady monthly income. The proceeds from the house sale, combined with Robert's life insurance and our retirement savings, meant I had a substantial nest egg. I wasn't wealthy, but I was far from destitute or dependent. You could live very comfortably for the rest of your life without touching the principal if it's properly invested, Barbara explained. Your children have been gaslighting you about your finances. My next stop was to Attorney Evelyn Lawrence's office. Barbara had called ahead, explaining the urgency of my situation. Evelyn, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s with reading glasses perched on her nose, listened intently as I explained my situation. This happens more often than you'd think, she said. We'll remove their access immediately and update your will and powers of attorney today. By noon, I had signed paperwork removing Maxwell and Pamela from all my accounts. By 2 o'clock, I had opened new accounts at a different bank, transferring most of my funds. By 4, I had updated my will, medical directives, and power of attorney, naming Barbara as my healthcare proxy instead of my children. What about living arrangements? Evelyn asked as we finished the paperwork. I need to find a place quickly, I admitted. I might know something, Barbara said, making a quick phone call. My friend Thomas Wilson is a retired financial advisor. He owns several properties and has a small villa that just became available. It's in a nice area, very private. By sunset, I had viewed the villa and signed a 6-month lease. It was perfect. A small 2-bedroom home with a sunny kitchen and a tiny garden in the back. More importantly, it was in a gated community where Maxwell couldn't just show up unannounced. The next morning, while Maxwell was at work and the kids at school, I packed 2 suitcases with my essential belongings. I left most things behind, they were just stuff and I could replace what I needed. I wrote a simple note. Maxwell, I've moved out to live independently. I've removed your access to my finances as I'll be managing them myself from now on. I'll call once I'm settled. Mom. Barbara picked me up, and we moved my few belongings to the villa. Thomas met us there with the keys and helped carry my suitcases inside. He was a distinguished-looking man with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. The security code is set to your birth year, but you can change it any time, he explained. And call me if you need anything at all. That first night alone was a strange mixture of emotions. I felt scared, sitting in an unfamiliar living room as darkness fell. But underneath the fear was something else. Exhilaration. For the first time in years, I answered to no one. No one would question my choice to have ice cream for dinner or read until 2 a.m. if I wanted. The first call came at 6:48 p.m. Just as I was making a cup of tea, Maxwell's name flashed on my phone screen. I let it go to voicemail. Then Pamela called. Then Maxwell again. By morning, I had 17 missed calls and 32 text messages, ranging from concerned to furious. Mom, where are you? This isn't funny. You can't just leave. What about your medications? I'm calling the police if you don't respond. How could you do this to us after everything we've done for you? I texted them both the same message. I am safe and well. I've moved into my own place, and will contact you when I'm ready to talk. Please respect my space. The responses were immediate and angry. Maxwell threatened legal action. Pamela accused me of having a mental breakdown. I turned off my phone and took a long, luxurious bath in my new tub, using the expensive bath oils I had denied myself for months, because they were wasteful. For the first time since Robert died, I felt like myself again. Not someone's mother, not a widow, not a burden. Just Dorothy Moore, starting a new chapter. The first week alone was an adjustment. Without grandchildren to care for or meals to prepare for others, my time was my own. I established new routines. Morning coffee in the garden, walks around the neighborhood, afternoons reading or watching documentaries I've been wanting to see. I met a few neighbors, mostly retirees like myself, who were friendly without being intrusive. Thomas Wilson lived just 3 houses down and stopped by occasionally to check if I needed anything. He was 67, a widower for 5 years, and surprisingly easy to talk to. I notice you haven't changed any light bulbs or adjusted the thermostat, he commented one afternoon, bringing over fresh tomatoes from his garden. My son convinced me I couldn't handle those things anymore. I admitted, embarrassed. Thomas frowned. Would you like me to show you how the thermostat works? It's pretty straightforward. That simple offer of teaching rather than taking over brought tears to my eyes. Over the next few days, Thomas patiently showed me how to work every appliance in the villa, explaining rather than dismissing. A week after moving in, Thomas made an unexpected offer. Dorothy, I hope this isn't overstepping, but I was a financial advisor for 40 years. If you'd like, I could review your finances professionally. No charge, just as a neighbor. Still cautious after my children's manipulation, I hesitated. You can have Barbara present, and we'll only look at what you're comfortable sharing, he added, sensing my reluctance. The review revealed something disturbing. Thomas noticed transactions I hadn't authorized. Regular transfers from my accounts to unknown destinations over the past 2 years. These look systematic, he said grimly. Small enough amounts that you might not notice individually, but they add up to over $45,000. Barbara looked shocked. Dorothy, I think your children have been stealing from you. The evidence was irrefutable once we knew where to look. Maxwell had been transferring money regularly to cover gambling debts. Pamela had borrowed funds several times without repaying. Richard had been paid from my accounts for legal services I never requested. I felt physically ill. All those accusations about me being a financial burden while they were actively draining my accounts. All those guilt trips about expenses while they helped themselves to my money. I agreed to meet them at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown. They arrived together, presenting a united front. Maxwell looked haggard, Pamela tense. Mom, this rebellion needs to stop. Maxwell started before I could speak. We're worried about you living alone. You're not thinking clearly, Pamela added. The stress of losing Dad has finally caught up with you. I took a deep breath. I know about the money, I said quietly. Their expressions shifted subtly. Maxwell's jaw tightened. Pamela's eyes darted away. What money? Maxwell asked too casually. The $45,000 you both took from my accounts over the past 2 years, I said, sliding a folder with the transaction records across the table. Maxwell, there are transfers matching dates and amounts of your gambling losses. Pamela, there are withdrawals coinciding with your renovation project last year. Their faces drained of color. It was just temporary, Maxwell stammered. I was going to pay it back. And you needed my wedding ring to cover expenses? I asked. Pamela's composure cracked. Richard's firm is struggling. We're about to lose our house. We needed help, and you have all this money just sitting there. So you decided to take it without asking, while making me feel like I was a burden? My voice remained calm though my hands shook. You made me believe I was incapable of living independently, that I was draining your resources, when the opposite was true. Maxwell tried another tack. Mom, you're making a huge deal out of family helping family. That money would have been our inheritance anyway. That statement crystallized everything wrong with their attitude. I stood up. I've filed a police report about the financial exploitation, I said. Officer Ramirez suggested family counseling instead of pressing charges, given our history. I've agreed to that option, but only if the money is repaid in full. You called the police on your own children? Pamela hissed, looking around the coffee shop to see if anyone was watching. I reported a crime, I corrected her. The fact that family committed it makes it worse, not better. I left them sitting there, stunned at my transformation from compliant mother to someone who stood up for herself. The aftermath was immediate and explosive. Extended family members called, some supporting me, others berating me for tearing the family apart. My sister Linda was firmly in my corner, having warned me about Maxwell's gambling for years. My brother-in-law George sided with my children, calling me selfish and ungrateful. I established firm boundaries. All communication would go through Evelyn Lawrence until further notice. No more manipulation, no more gaslighting, no more theft. For the first time in my adult life, I put myself first. And despite the chaos swirling around me, I slept better than I had in years. 3 weeks after moving into the villa, I met with Olivia Martinez, a certified financial planner Barbara recommended. Unlike Maxwell's condescending explanations of my finances, Olivia spoke to me as an intelligent adult, breaking down complex concepts clearly without talking down to me. Mrs. Moore, based on my analysis, you're in an excellent financial position, she explained, showing me detailed projections. Your pension and Social Security cover your basic expenses. The proceeds from your house sale, properly invested, could generate significant income without touching the principal. The surprising revelation: I had enough money to purchase a small villa outright if I wanted to. Real estate in this area tends to appreciate well, Olivia advised. If you find a place you love, buying might be a sound investment rather than renting long-term. The idea of owning my own home again gave me a thrill. Thomas offered to show me some properties in the neighborhood. No pressure to buy from him. The market has some interesting options right now, he said as we toured a lovely 2-bedroom villa, with a sunroom perfect for painting. Take your time deciding. While house hunting, I decided to update my resume. Before teaching, I'd worked in bookstores and always loved the environment. The local bookshop, Turning Pages, had a part-time position available. Working 15 hours a week surrounded by books and interesting people sounded perfect. Your literature background is exactly what we need, Margaret, the owner, said after interviewing me. Can you start next Tuesday? Having my own income, however modest compared to my pension, felt empowering. I wasn't just surviving, I was building a new life. Barbara invited me to her book club, introducing me to a circle of vibrant women in their 60s and 70s. Listening to their stories of reinvention after divorce, widowhood, or retirement inspired me. Helen had started marathon running at 62. Joan had published her first novel at 70. We've been through the hard stuff, Joan said over wine one evening. But honestly, these are some of the best years. We know who we are now. On a whim, I signed up for a painting class at the community center, something Pamela had ridiculed. My first attempts were awful, but the process brought me joy. The instructor, Gina, encouraged experimentation without judgment. Art isn't about perfection, she insisted. It's about expression. By the 6th class, I'd created a sunset landscape I was actually proud of. When the community center held an art fair, Gina encouraged me to display it. To my shock, someone bought it for $200. They loved the emotional quality, Gina explained. You've got real talent, Dorothy. My friendship with Thomas evolved naturally. We enjoyed similar books, classic films, and gardening. He never pushed for more than I was ready to give, respecting my need for independence after years of being controlled. I married young and went straight from my parents' house to living with Elaine, he confided one evening as we shared dinner. After she died, I had to learn who I was on my own. It takes time. His understanding of my journey made him easy to talk to. When he suggested some investment opportunities Maxwell had overlooked, I appreciated his expertise without feeling patronized. The villa I fell in love with came on the market unexpectedly, when the owners needed to relocate for health reasons. It was slightly smaller than my rental but had a dedicated studio space and a garden bursting with rose bushes. The location is excellent, and the price is fair given the current market, Thomas advised professionally. But the decision should be about whether it feels like home. It did. From the moment I walked in, I could envision my life there. The closing process took 4 weeks, during which I prepared for the move. Barbara helped me shop for furniture that reflected my taste, not what Pamela thought appropriate for someone my age. Closing day arrived with a mixture of nerves and excitement. Signing the final paperwork, accepting the keys, and walking into my own home again brought a sense of accomplishment I hadn't felt in years. That evening, I hosted a small dinner party for my new circle: Barbara, Thomas, Margaret from the bookstore, and Gina from my painting class. We drank wine in my garden as the sun set, laughing and sharing stories. No one questioned my choices or made me feel incapable. To new beginnings, Barbara toasted, raising her glass. I looked around at these people who valued me as I was, not for what I could provide them, and felt truly at home for the first time since Robert died. No children were present, but surprisingly, I was at peace with that. They needed to earn their place in my new life, not demand it as an entitlement. 2 months after moving out, I experienced a frightening episode. While working at the bookstore, I felt a sharp chest pain and dizziness. Margaret called an ambulance despite my protests. At the hospital, tests revealed it wasn't a heart attack but stress-induced angina. The doctor recommended rest, stress management techniques, and follow-up appointments. Mrs. Moore, is there someone we should call? The nurse asked. I gave them Barbara's number as my emergency contact. However, somehow Maxwell and Pamela found out about my hospitalization. I suspect someone from our extended family informed them. When I woke from a nap in my hospital room, they were both there, speaking with my doctor in the hallway. Through the partially open door, I heard concerning phrases. As her children, we should be making these decisions. She's been acting erratically for months. We're concerned about her mental capacity. Barbara arrived before they could take control, firmly presenting the healthcare power of attorney documents. I'm Mrs. Moore's designated healthcare proxy, she informed the doctor. Any medical decisions go through me if Dorothy is unable to make them herself. The doctor, to his credit, immediately respected the legal documentation. Maxwell and Pamela were furious but couldn't override the paperwork. When I was discharged the following day, Barbara drove me home. As we pulled into my driveway, my heart sank. Maxwell's car was parked in front of my villa, with Pamela's beside it. Do you want me to ask them to leave? Barbara offered. No, I need to handle this, I said, though my chest tightened at the thought of confrontation. They were waiting on my porch, both looking grim. Inside, the tension was palpable as they inspected my home with critical eyes. Mom, we need to talk, Maxwell began once I was settled in my favorite chair. This health scare proves you shouldn't be living alone. It was minor angina, not a heart attack, I corrected him. Still, you need supervision, Pamela insisted. We think you should sell this place and move into assisted living. I looked at them carefully, noticing their disheveled appearance. Maxwell's typically immaculate suit was wrinkled. Pamela's designer outfit from last season had a small stain on the sleeve. What's really going on? I asked directly, They exchanged glances before Maxwell broke. "I'm in trouble, Mom," he admitted, voice cracking. "I owe money to people you don't want to owe money to. They're not patient like banks. Loan sharks." I clarified, stomach dropping. He nodded miserably. "If I don't pay $50,000 by next week, they've threatened Noah and Emily." Pamela jumped in. "And Richard's firm is bankrupt. We're being evicted next month. We've got nowhere to go." Now the real purpose of their visit became clear. "You want to move in with me," I stated flatly. "Just temporarily," Maxwell assured me quickly. "Until we get back on our feet. We could help take care of you after your health scare." "Both families?" I asked, looking around my modest two-bedroom villa. "The kids could share the second bedroom," Pamela explained, as if she'd already planned it out. "Maxwell could take the sofa, and Richard and I could use an air mattress in the living room. 6 people in my small villa. 6 people who had lied to me, stolen from me, and treated me like an incompetent burden. What about my health needs?" I asked, buying time to process. "We'd take care of everything," Pamela said eagerly. "You wouldn't have to worry about a thing." Just like before, when taking care meant controlling every aspect of my life. "Grandma!" A small voice interrupted our conversation as Emily peeked in from the kitchen. "Your house is really pretty." I hadn't even realized the children were here. My heart softened seeing my grandchildren, the innocent parties in all this. "Thank you, sweetheart," I replied. Maxwell seized the opportunity. "The kids miss you so much, Mom. Noah's grades are slipping because he's worried about you." Using the children as emotional leverage was low, even for him. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. It was Thomas, holding a container of homemade soup. "I heard you were coming home today," he said, then paused, registering the tense scene. "I can come back later if this isn't a good time." "No, please come in," I said, grateful for his presence. Maxwell and Pamela sized him up immediately, eyes narrowing at our obvious familiarity. "Mom, who is this?" Pamela asked with forced politeness. "Thomas Wilson, my neighbor and friend." I introduced him. "Thomas, these are my children, Maxwell and Pamela." The conversation resumed with Thomas quietly observing. My children alternated between guilt trips about my health, concerns about the grandchildren, and thinly veiled demands for financial rescue. "So you see, Mom," Maxwell concluded, "we really need to stick together as a family right now. All of us under one roof makes the most sense." I took a deep breath, feeling Thomas's supportive presence beside me. "I understand you're both facing serious problems," I said carefully. "But moving 6 people into this villa isn't the solution." "But Mom," Pamela protested. "I can refer you to financial counseling services," I continued firmly. "And Maxwell, there are gambling addiction resources that can help with your situation. We don't need counseling, we need money and a place to stay." Maxwell snapped, his composure finally breaking. "After everything we've done for you. Like stealing from me? Making me feel incompetent? Trying to sell my wedding ring?" I kept my voice steady despite my racing heart. "You're remembering things wrong," Pamela insisted. "We were trying to help you manage your money because you kept making poor decisions." Thomas cleared his throat. "That's not what the bank records show," he said quietly. Maxwell turned on him furiously. "Stay out of this. This is family business. And Dorothy has chosen me to be part of her support system," Thomas replied calmly. "I think you both need to leave now. Dorothy needs rest after her hospital stay. So that's it." Maxwell stood up, face flushed with anger. "You're choosing this stranger over your own family? Your own grandchildren?" "I'm choosing myself," I clarified. "Something I should have done months ago. I love you both and I love my grandchildren, but I won't be manipulated or controlled anymore." They stormed out, Maxwell threatening legal action for abandonment, Pamela crying dramatically about how I'd changed since Robert died. Only Emily and Noah hugged me goodbye, their confusion evident. After they left, I sat in silence, the weight of the confrontation pressing on my chest. "You did the right thing," Thomas said gently. "Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's healthy." "They'll follow through on those threats," I said, my voice shaking. "They're desperate." "Then we'll handle whatever comes next," he assured me. "You're not alone in this, Dorothy." For the first time in decades, I truly believed that standing my ground was not just possible but necessary. My health, my peace, my future depended on it. Maxwell made good on his threats. 2 weeks after our confrontation, I received formal notice that my children had filed for conservatorship, claiming I was mentally incompetent to manage my own affairs. They're citing your hospital visit as evidence of declining health and impaired judgment, Evelyn explained after reviewing the paperwork. And they've included statements from Richard claiming you've shown signs of dementia. That's absurd, I protested. I've never been diagnosed with any cognitive impairment. Which is why we'll fight this, Evelyn assured me. The court will order an independent psychological evaluation, which you'll pass easily. But Dorothy, you need to understand how serious this is. If they succeed, you'll lose control of your finances and potentially your living arrangements. The required psychological evaluation was scheduled with Dr. Jennifer Coleman, a geriatric psychiatrist with no connection to either party. I arrived nervous, but determined to demonstrate my competence. The 3-hour assessment included memory tests, problem-solving exercises, and extensive questions about my daily functioning and decision-making. Mrs. Moore, do you know why your children might believe you're unable to manage your affairs? Dr. Coleman asked toward the end of our session. They need money, I said simply, and they want control of mine. Dr. Coleman's report to the court was unequivocal. I showed no signs of cognitive impairment, dementia, or inability to manage my personal or financial affairs. In fact, my test scores were significantly above average for my age group. The conservatorship hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. I arrived with Evelyn, Barbara, and Thomas for moral support. Maxwell and Pamela sat across the aisle with Richard, who apparently was acting as their attorney despite his firm's troubles. Judge Harriet Simmons, a stern-looking woman in her 60s, reviewed the documentation before addressing the court. I've read Dr. Coleman's evaluation, the financial records submitted by both parties, and the petitioner's claims, she began. Mr. Moore, Mrs. Harper, please explain why you believe your mother requires conservatorship despite medical evidence to the contrary. Maxwell stood, straightening his tie nervously. Your Honor, our mother has been making increasingly erratic decisions since our father's death. She suddenly moved out without telling anyone, cut off contact with family, and has fallen under the influence of people who may not have her best interests at heart. He glanced pointedly at Thomas. And the financial records showing you transferred over $45,000 from your mother's accounts without her knowledge or consent. Judge Simmons asked, looking over her reading glasses. Maxwell paled. Those were loans that Mom agreed to. She's just forgotten those conversations. Evelyn stood. Your Honor, we have bank surveillance footage of Mr. Moore making these transfers using his mother's ATM card while she was visiting her sister in Florida. Mrs. Moore was clearly not present to authorize these transactions. The judge's expression hardened. Mr. Moore, are you aware that what you're describing could constitute elder financial abuse? Richard quickly jumped up. Your Honor, this hearing is about Mrs. Moore's competence, not past financial misunderstandings within the family. Mr. Harper, these misunderstandings speak directly to motive, Judge Simmons countered. Now, regarding Mrs. Harper's claim that her mother needs supervision for health reasons, I see nothing in these medical records indicating inability to live independently. In fact, her doctors have noted that her health has improved since she moved into her own home. The hearing continued for another hour, with each of my children's claims systematically dismantled by evidence and testimony. When it was my turn to speak, I kept my statement simple and direct. Your Honor, I love my children, but they've betrayed my trust repeatedly. They convinced me I was incapable, so they could control my assets. When I reclaimed my independence, they attempted to use legal means to regain that control. I'm mentally sound, financially stable, and happier than I've been in years living on my own terms. I asked the court to dismiss this petition and allow me to continue my independent life. Judge Simmons took only 15 minutes to reach her decision. This court finds no evidence supporting the need for conservatorship. Mrs. Dorothy Moore is clearly competent to manage her own affairs. Furthermore, The evidence suggests this petition was filed in bad faith, primarily to gain control of Mrs. Moore's assets. She looked directly at Maxwell and Pamela. I'm dismissing this petition with prejudice and referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for potential elder abuse charges. This court does not look kindly on using conservatorship as a tool to gain control of another person's finances. The courtroom fell silent. Maxwell's face drained of color. Pamela began crying quietly. Richard looked like he might be ill. As we left the courthouse, a reporter from the local newspaper approached. Mrs. Moore, would you be willing to comment on your case? We're doing a series on elder rights and financial abuse. Initially I hesitated, but then realized my story might help others. Yes, I would, I replied. The resulting article, Standing Firm, How One Woman Fought Financial Elder Abuse, spread quickly through the community. The senior center contacted me, asking if I would speak at their monthly luncheon about financial independence for older adults. My first presentation was terrifying but ultimately rewarding. Seeing the recognition in the eyes of other seniors when I described the subtle ways control had been exerted over me confirmed I wasn't alone in this experience. It starts small, I explained to the rapt audience. Questions about your spending. Suggestions that you're becoming forgetful when you're not. Gradually taking over tasks you're perfectly capable of handling, until you doubt yourself. Several attendees approached afterward, sharing similar experiences and asking for advice. The center director invited me to make it a regular series. Meanwhile, my painting had evolved from hobby to small business. The local gallery agreed to display 3 of my pieces, all of which sold within 2 weeks. I was by no means a professional artist, but the additional income and creative fulfillment were deeply satisfying. The fallout from the failed conservatorship attempt hit my children hard. Maxwell finally admitted his gambling addiction after loan sharks vandalized his car. He entered a treatment program, recognizing he had hit rock bottom. Pamela and Richard faced bankruptcy proceedings, and were indeed forced to sell their house. They moved into a modest apartment, a significant downgrade from their previous lifestyle. The strain led them to marriage counseling, as they confronted years of financial dishonesty between them. My grandchildren were caught in the middle of this chaos. After careful consideration, I reached out to Maxwell and Pamela with a proposal. I would establish education funds for Noah, Emily, and Zoe that their parents could not access. The money would go directly toward future college expenses. I want to maintain a relationship with my grandchildren, I explained during separate meetings with each of my children. But it needs to be on appropriate terms, without manipulation or financial entanglements. Initially reluctant, they eventually agreed when they realized this was the only relationship I was offering for now. I arranged to see the grandchildren regularly, taking them for ice cream or museum visits, carefully building relationships independent of their parents' issues. "Grandma, are you mad at Daddy?" Noah asked during one of our outings. "I'm disappointed in some choices he's made," I answered honestly. "But I still love him just like I love you. Sometimes people need to face consequences to learn and grow." It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a beginning. For now, it was enough to see my grandchildren smiling again, free from the tension that had surrounded our previous interactions. 3 months after moving out of Maxwell's guest room, my life had transformed completely. My villa, purchased outright, was decorated exactly to my taste with comfortable furniture, colorful throw pillows, and walls adorned with artwork both purchased and created by my own hands. No more beige walls and generic decor that Pamela had insisted was appropriate. My daily routine brought joy rather than obligation. Mornings began with coffee in my sunny kitchen, followed by several hours in my painting studio. Afternoons at the bookstore connected me with interesting people and kept my mind engaged. Evenings often included dinner with Thomas or book club with Barbara and the other women who had become dear friends. My painting hobby had blossomed surprisingly. The local gallery now displayed my work regularly, and I had even received a few commissions. The extra income wasn't necessary but allowed me to indulge in art supplies and occasional treats without a moment's guilt. The legal battle with my children had concluded, but the emotional wounds remained. They had both hit financial rock bottom, forcing them to confront the consequences of their choices. Maxwell completed his gambling addiction program, and found a job at a smaller financial firm, making less but rebuilding his life honestly. Pamela and Richard downsized dramatically, selling luxury items to cover debts. In early June, I received separate messages from both children, requesting a meeting. After consulting with Barbara and Thomas, I agreed to see them at a neutral location, a quiet cafe downtown. Maxwell arrived first, looking healthier than I'd seen him in years. The haunted look had left his eyes, replaced by something that resembled peace. "Mom," he began, fidgeting with his napkin. "I've been working with my therapist on making amends as part of my recovery. What I did to you was inexcusable. I manipulated you, stole from you, and tried to control you when you deserved respect and honesty." His apology continued, specific and genuine rather than the vague "sorry if you felt hurt" non-apologies of the past. Pamela arrived shortly after, similarly transformed by her experiences. Her designer clothes and perfect makeup had been replaced by a simple dress and natural look. "The bankruptcy was humiliating," she admitted, "but it forced us to re-examine everything. Richard and I realized we'd been living a lie, trying to keep up appearances while drowning in debt. We did terrible things to you because we couldn't admit our own failures." Their apologies seemed sincere, but I remained cautious. "I appreciate your words," I told them, "but rebuilding trust will take time and consistent actions, not just promises." They both nodded, accepting this reality. "We'd like to start with family dinner," Maxwell suggested tentatively. "Once a month if you're comfortable. No pressure about money or living arrangements, just reconnecting." I considered the request. "I'd be willing to try. At my home, where I feel safe. But at the first sign of manipulation or control, it ends." The first dinner at my villa 2 weeks later was awkward but hopeful. Maxwell and Pamela brought the children, who were delighted to see where Grandma really lives. We ate lasagna in my small dining room, conversation stilted at first, but gradually warming as we found safe topics. "Your paintings are amazing, Mom," Pamela commented, studying the landscape hanging in the hallway. "I had no idea you had this talent." "Neither did I admitted. "Sometimes we discover new parts of ourselves when given the space to explore." The subtle reminder of how they had discouraged my painting wasn't lost on her. She nodded, accepting the gentle rebuke. Maxwell noticed the financial books on my shelf. "Thomas has been helping you with investments?" "As a friend and former financial advisor," I clarified, watching his expression. "He's been respectful of my independence while offering expertise when asked." Maxwell swallowed hard, likely remembering his own controlling approach. That's good, Mom. You deserve that respect." Slowly, cautiously, we began rebuilding our relationship on new terms. They saw me differently now, not as an aging parent to be managed, but as a capable woman with her own life and interests. I saw them more clearly too. Flawed people who had made serious mistakes, but were trying to grow beyond them. My relationship with Thomas evolved naturally into romance, something neither of us had expected. At our age, dating was refreshingly straightforward. No games, no pretense, just two people enjoying each other's company and building a connection based on mutual respect. I never thought I'd find this kind of relationship again. I confided to him one evening as we sat in my garden watching the sunset. After Robert died, I assumed that chapter of my life was closed. "Life has a way of surprising us," he replied, taking my hand, "especially when we're brave enough to start over." In September, I booked my first real vacation in years, a painting retreat in Santa Fe. 10 days of workshops, desert landscapes, and creative exploration. No responsibilities, no one to answer to, just pure indulgence in my passion. "You're going alone?" Pamela asked when I mentioned it, old concerns briefly flickering across her face. "Yes," I replied simply. "It's something I've always wanted to do." Instead of trying to talk me out of it, she surprised me. "Take lots of pictures. I'd love to see what inspires your work." It was a small moment but significant. My independence was no longer something they questioned but something they acknowledged as essential to who I was. The evening before my departure for Santa Fe, I finished a painting I'd been working on for weeks. A sunrise over water, light breaking through clouds, titled New Beginnings. It captured everything I'd experienced over the past year. The darkness giving way to light, the uncertainty yielding to clarity, the pain transforming into peace. Looking back on that Thursday night dinner when my children called me a burden, I hardly recognized the woman I had been then. Timid, doubtful, allowing others to define my worth and capabilities. The journey from that table to this studio had been painful but necessary. By removing their names from my accounts that night, I hadn't just protected my finances. I had reclaimed my identity, my power, my future. My real life hadn't ended with Robert's death or even begun with my children's betrayal. It had always been there, waiting for me to recognize and embrace it. 1 year after moving into my villa, I hosted a dinner party for everyone who had been part of my journey. Barbara, Thomas, my book club friends, colleagues from the bookstore and gallery, and yes, my children and grandchildren. As I looked around the table at these people who now saw me for who I truly was, I realized I had created something precious. A life entirely my own, built on my terms. At 65, I wasn't a burden. I was just beginning. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who tried to control your life or finances? What steps did you take to reclaim your independence? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else find the courage to make a change. If you found Dorothy's journey inspiring, please like and subscribe to see more stories of resilience and new beginnings. Remember, it's never too late to start your real life.